Mostly dry for Wales by the afternoon as well as the Midlands, but for the south and southeast, outbreaks of rain, heavy at times, and as a result, significantly cooler compared with Wednesday. That rain's out of the way by Friday morning, and then for most, it's a much brighter start to the day. Sunny spells, but further showers are likely in places, especially, although not exclusively, across Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and Western England. Saturday, more widespread and heavier downpours for a time, interspersed by sunny spells, sunshine on Sunday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Gary King. In Kent, the M25 currently blocked in both directions. Long delays after an accident involving several vehicles between junction 1B at Dartford and 2 at the Darrenth interchange. Delays though back towards junction 28 at the A12. In the West Midlands, northbound M6, there's a lane closed. Long delays due to an accident between junction 6 at Spaghetti Junction and junction 7 at Great Bar. Cheshire, the northbound M6 looking very busy between junction 20 at the M56 and junction 21 at Woolston. In Lancashire, the eastbound M58 currently closed, traffic stationary due to an accident between junction 4 at Skelmersdale and junction 5 at Upholland. Delays though going back towards junction 3 at Bickerstaffe. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to win our Super Summer Giveaway. With your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. Which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly, you've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Well, it was the first Prime Minister's questions today for Keir Starmer, but I've got to ask the question, is there any opposition? Because it appears to be the Uni-Party. Yes, Rishi Sunak agreeing with virtually everything. Do we need a proper opposition to have a healthy democracy? Well, Biden's out of the way. It's Kamala Harris. Is she going to provide real opposition to Donald Trump? Or is she actually, under scrutiny, going to really struggle up against a guy who is a really tough opponent? The royal family finances are really in very, very good shape, and the reason for that, of course, is the Crown Estates own a lot of offshore seabed where wind farms are going up and they're making vast profits. But do the royal family give us real value for money? Plus, I'll reveal tonight, exclusively here on GB News, another Farage debanking story. All of that comes after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you and good evening to you. Well, the main story from the GB newsroom tonight is that police in Kent say the stabbing of a British Army officer near a barracks in Gillingham isn't being treated as terrorism at this stage. However, they say they are being supported by counter-terror specialists. Detectives are continuing with their investigations this evening after witnesses reported hearing screams just before 6 o'clock yesterday evening. Locals rushed to help the officer, including his wife, just in time to see the attacker, who was wearing a mask, flee on a moped. The suspect was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder about 20 minutes later after being stopped by members of the public. The victim, aged in his 40s, was taken to hospital with serious injuries. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, says she's being kept up to date on the investigation.
This is an appalling attack on a serving soldier. My thoughts go to him and to his family, wishing him a speedy recovery. This is an ongoing police investigation by Kent Police. It's really important that they have everyone's support in this investigation. But this was a just appalling attack on a serving soldier, and I know that the whole country will be thinking of him and his family and wishing him a speedy recovery.
Yvette Cooper. Now, Sir Keir Starmer accused the previous government of losing control of Britain's borders today as he took part in his first PMQs as Prime Minister. Reform UK's Rupert Lowe quizzed the Prime Minister on Labour's migration plans, claiming that failure to control the borders has damaged communities. The Prime Minister conceded small boat crossings on the Channel are a serious issue, but he laid blame at the feet of the Tories.
I'm not sure I agree with his numbers, but look, I do think that it's serious that the previous government lost control of our borders. Record numbers have crossed the Channel since the Leader of the Opposition, when he was Prime Minister for 18 months, 50,000 people crossed the Channel. It's a serious issue that requires a serious answer. And that is why we will set up our Border Security Command to take down the gangs that are running this vile trade. What we won't do is waste further time on a gimmick that cost a fortune and remove just 4 volunteers.
Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak used the same session of Prime Minister's questions today to call for tougher sanctions on Russia. The leader of the opposition said the work of the previous government had laid the groundwork for stronger action against Moscow, which he said would help fund Ukraine's reconstruction. And then, taking a slightly lighter tone, the former Prime Minister joked as he sent his best wishes to Britain's Olympians in Paris.
And I also join with the Prime Minister in his warm words about our Olympic athletes. Yeah. I've no doubt that after years of training, focus and dedication, they'll bring back many gold medals. Although, to be honest, I'm probably not the first person they want to hear advice from on how to win. But I'm glad in our exchanges.
Now, nominations open this evening to succeed Rishi Sunak as leader of the Conservative Party. The Shadow Home Secretary, James Cleverly, threw his hats in the ring last night, saying he's running to take the party's top job if he can. He published a video emphasising his credentials, the former Foreign and Home Secretary saying the Conservatives needed to re-establish its reputation as a party that helps grow the economy and help people achieve their aspirations. He's the first to announce a leadership bid, and any challengers will need to get in quickly before nominations close on Monday. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Well, I spent many hours in Parliament. Yesterday, I gave my maiden speech, and I was in today, of course, for the first Prime Minister's questions, the big, great piece of theatre that is, I mean, really, let's be honest about it, quite a global sensation. What have I noticed so far in the Parliament? Well, I have to tell you, I reckon it is between 85 and 90% Remainers. I reckon it's over 50% rejoiners. I mean, they would literally rejoin the European Union tomorrow. And if you even mention or dare to mention legal or illegal immigration, they look at you, they raise their eyes as if you're spoiling a really rather convivial dinner party. So I don't actually think our electoral system, our first-past-the-post system, is giving us really an especially balanced parliament that represents the views of the country. That's me. But then again, you know, any parliament that I'm in, I'm always in a tiny minority in the chamber. But what's also been really interesting, right from Monday when Keir Starmer gave a long speech, he talked about the NATO summit, the European political community. What has been clear from Rishi Sunak, what has been clear from many, many Conservative MPs getting up and speaking, is that they all seem to agree on anything. It appears to be a bit of a uni-party. Let's have a look at Rishi Sunak speaking at the dispatch box in PMQs today.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad in our exchanges so far we have maintained a cross-party consensus on important matters of foreign policy. I'm glad to hear the Prime Minister raise the NATO summit as well, because I very much welcome the message that came out loud and clear from that summit, and indeed the Prime Minister's words from the dispatch box on Monday about Ukraine's irreversible path to NATO membership. I know firsthand how important it is that our Prime Minister can use his prerogative power to quickly respond militarily to protect British national security, sometimes without giving this House prior notice. Now, these are perhaps the most difficult decisions that a Prime Minister can take, and I welcomed his support when I made them. And I want to take this opportunity to assure him of the opposition's support if he deems it necessary to take similar action in the future.
And that's the tone. Everyone agrees on pretty much everything. And, you know, there was a Bob Blackman, who's a Conservative member of Parliament for Harrow East. He was speaking yesterday, and I was tempted to shout out, you're on the wrong side of the house, mate. You should be across with the Labour Party. I literally can't tell them apart. Is there an opposition? I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Farage at GB News. Now, I raised this point. OK, the Conservatives have taken a terrible beating. Maybe there's an argument for just a little bit of humility from them. But I think it's important for democracy to work, especially when you have a Labour government with a huge majority. I think an opposition voice that asks serious questions is actually an essential part of that process. I'm joined this evening by two friends of the programme, Richard Drax, former Conservative Member of Parliament, and Stella Santakidou, former Labour advisor and political commentator. And I think I pronounced your name right.
You pronounced it wonderfully. Like a true European.
Oh, here we go. Well, talking of that, it appears we're fast-tracking back into all sorts of agreements with the European Union. I mean, Starmer promised we wouldn't actually rejoin the institutions of the European Union, but it seems to me this is a very pro-EU government.
I would say it's quite the opposite. I read a statement by Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary, today, in which he said that as part of the growth mission board that Rachel Reeves is leading, they're going to make it easier to scrap EU law so that we can go ahead with building more infrastructure and more housing. So I would say they are making true the intention of Boris Johnson, which was to, you know, give this country some growth and get rid of any kind of regulation that is not serving us.
Well, a different point of view. I hope you're right, by the way, because the Conservatives got rid of virtually no EU rules at all. Richard Drax, I say former Conservative MP, you were one of 251 that didn't make it back.
That's right, yes.
I mean, how do you look at the Conservative Party? I mean, are they going to provide any opposition, or are they just so hopelessly split that they can't?
Well, the key word, Nigel, is opposition, isn't it? And today we didn't really see that. And I quite understand it's the first session, and the ex-Prime Minister is probably feeling a bit sore. The party's feeling a bit humbled, I'm sure, and so it was meant to be, you know, a bit consensual today. But when we know that the Labour Party, with this massive majority, and all the things that are coming down the road that they haven't told us are coming, but we know are, not least tax rises,
taxes, pensions,
and a closer move to the EU, I would have thought it's now the time to start digging into what their policies are, which the press, in my view, failed to do over that 6-week election campaign.
Yeah, there wasn't much scrutiny. And Stella, the interesting thing is, I mean, obviously, Starmer's in a very, very good mood. The Labour benches are all joyous. They've secured this huge victory, and yet only 33.8% of the vote. A third of the vote and 2/3 of the seat. And I raise this because the last Labour conference voted for electoral reform. Do you think that's now off the agenda?
Well, proportional representation, electoral reform there has been a referendum in this country which was rejected. So this has already been considered by the electorate. What I would say about the percentage that Keir Starmer got is that people would have voted tactically because they are aware of the first past the post system. So a British voter knows when they're going to the ballot box that if there is a competition between a Lib Dem and a Conservative, even if I want a Labour government, for me to get a Labour government, I have to vote for the Lib Dem so that we get the Tories out. I'm really sorry, Richard.
Yeah, I mean, but what an awful system. that we're not really voting for who we believe in. We're voting tactically, we're voting cynically, we're voting for who we hate least.
I mean, how many people do you know who are so involved in politics where they say, I mean, that would be a bit unhealthy, where they say, I love this politician is my hero. It's usually posthumously that we look at Clement Attlee and whoever else and we think, oh, they were a really good reform politician.
But to vote positively, I think electoral reform would give us that. Do you think this government is going to have any honeymoon at all? And I say that because the economic figures, the borrowing figures that we've seen for the last month are bad, to say the very least. I look at the front bench. There are clearly some people there with experience, but a lot of them may well be out of their depth. Blair in 97 had this amazing 6 to 9 month period when no one challenged anything he said. This is going to be tough, isn't it?
The situation in the country was definitely better for sure, and we see that from all of the statistics that have been presented this week. The Office of the National Audit Office and several departments have released some very, very worrying statistics about the state of the infrastructure and our roads, the state of the NHS and the underinvestment that has been going on there. Crime up 40% compared to 12 months ago.
But Stella, we've spent more and more money on the NHS. We've gone from just a few years ago, 7.5% of GDP on the NHS to over 11% on the NHS. It's not underfunding that's the problem.
Yes, absolutely. I think what happened with the NHS is that you have an increasingly older population, and rather than you spend all of that money on the day-to-day costs, so you're not really spending on the infrastructure, so that's a big problem. The Labour Party recognises that Wes Streeting, the health secretary, has said, we are going to spend money on getting new machines, which we desperately need, but at the same time, we're going to reform the NHS so that it is not a black hole of cash.
Stella, I really hope he does. It won't be easy, but I hope he does.
Yeah, I hope he does too. I mean, less bureaucrats, that's the key. There's layer upon layer upon layer, and I've heard it during my 14 years as an MP from the local NHS, and they all say the huge levels of bureaucracy have increased. Diversity people on £50,000, £60,000 a year. I mean, why do you need someone like that? A good manager should be able to cope with that sort of issue. Money back to clinicians in the front line and less than the bureaucrats.
Yeah, I'm sure that sentiment's shared by the public. Yeah. Let's see Wes Streeting at least is prepared to think outside the box on this. Good. So we wish him well, genuinely. Richard, back to the main question. Yeah. You know, is there an opposition? It doesn't feel like there is one at the moment. I guess a lot depends on who the next Conservative leader is.
It does.
And how do you see that context?
I don't want to make predictions or comment about my former colleagues because they're friends, and that would be wrong of me to do so. Personally, I would have thought a period of calm would be no bad thing. If I were back in the House, I would suggest that Ian Duncan-Smith, for example, whose integrity is unquestioned, I'm not saying that the others are, but he is a former leader, should be appointed as an interim leader for about a year or so, while these new have a chance to sell themselves and then be chosen.
That argument was made, but as it is, they've made a decision.
November the 2nd, isn't it? November
the 2nd.
Yeah.
And Sunak will stay on till then.
Yeah.
Is this going to be a battle between the Eurosceptic right and the One Nationers? Is it as simple as that?
The Conservative Party has one single job to do, in my very humble opinion, and that's to be Conservative and to go back to its core philosophy, which, since I got in 2010, I've seen the party drift away from, starting with David Cameron, and then it just went away. So to go back to our core philosophy, which is the simplest of all the political philosophies, ours, go back to that, and we will start to win again. If we start claiming don't go too far right or too far left, or let's try and find the centre, these places don't exist. Either you have a philosophy and you believe in it, or you don't.
Final thought on not so much opposition, but Keir Starmer. 7 people last night rebelled on the 2-child limit for child benefit. boom, they've had the whip removed. I mean, was that necessary?
Well, as Jacob Rees-Mogg was explaining at the State of the Nation last night, this is a constitutional vote. This is a constitutionally important vote, especially after an election. This is a vote not just on an amendment from the opposition, but a vote of confidence in the government.
On their manifesto.
Exactly, on a manifesto, on something that was in the manifesto. So these 7 MPs, there were other MPs like Diane Abbott, for example, who did not vote on this amendment, even though you will not find a person in the Labour Party who is in favour of the two-child benefit cap. You will not find an MP who is in favour of it.
Yet.
So these people were trying to make a statement, and I completely accept that. You get to do that, but then at the same time, you can see how the leader gets to do that early on to show to the rest of the MPs, especially the new MPs, to understand what it's going to be like.
So is Keir Starmer a bit tougher than he looks?
I mean, we already knew that. He's tough enough.
Well, I have to say, he did kick out some of the hard left, and I've, over the last couple of years on this programme, said you have to give him credit for getting rid of the Corbyns and some of those people. We'll see. He's facing an almighty test. And for the sake of the country, I guess we do wish him well. But we do need a parliament that challenges a Labour Party with a huge majority. I think a fair bit will depend on who the next Conservative leader is, but that's many, many months away. But I can assure you, our little gang of 5 will be making plenty of noise over the course of the next few days. So, since I was last with you, Biden has gone, something I predicted in September 2023. I got that one right. And it's a coronation. It's Kamala Harris versus Trump. But can she really do any better than Biden did? And I'm just not convinced. I think her performance as vice president has been pretty underwhelming. We'll get an American pundit on that in just a moment.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Stefan Kyriazis has, as always, been in theatres. He's here to tell us of his experiences. Hello, Stefan, or should I say, hello, Dolly.
Well, hello, Michael.
Well, hello.
You're looking swell, Michael. I can tell, Michael. You're still glowing, you're crowing, and you're going strong. So I have been to see Hello, Dolly at the Palladium. It's on there until September.
Seems like you've enjoyed it.
It is absolutely pure joy. I think we've even got a little bit of footage just to get people in the mood of the curtain call. But it is just sublime joy, headlined by Imelda Staunton. Let's see if we've got a little clip for everybody to look at.
It was a great show, was it?
It's a feel-good show? Absolute bliss. So 1964 musical, music and lyrics by Jerry Herman. 1969 famous Barbra Streisand film. But it's been played by Carol Channing, Ethel Merman, Bette Midler, all these people, Danny LaRue. So the joy of this show, it's so traditional, but you have an old woman leading the show, and then Irene Malloy, who's another slightly younger widow in New York, the hat maker. Orchestration's gorgeous, masked voice is gorgeous. Big train, kind of cut-out train, fills the stage. They all climb on board. It builds towards the end. You get the big Hello, Dolly number, and the whole she did there. Wow, 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 fellas. Look at the old girl now. Staunton is 68, I think. She's 5'0". The audience kept applauding through the show. She stood there. There was a moment. We all felt such joy.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Weekday weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m, followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain, followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
After today's PMQs, I asked the question, is there an opposition? Your responses coming in. Steve says, Starmer and Sunak have a bromance and it's designed to maintain the two-party system. And it's sickening. A very, very straightforward response from Bill, who says, 2 words, 2 cheeks. I think we all know what you mean, Bill. Mary says, be fair, Nigel. Rishi said he wouldn't be political whilst there is a leadership contest. Well, Mary, that's fine, but we're not going to have a Conservative leader until the 2nd of November. And there are major things happening in our country and around the world. So I think to say I'm going to just not really play the game for the next few months, I don't find that myself particularly acceptable. So it's going to be Kamala Harris. Yes, she is going to be the candidate that takes on Donald Trump for the presidency of the United States. I'm joined live down the line from Washington, D.C. by John Christopher Buer, White House correspondent at Real Political News, and he joins me right now. John Christopher, I wonder, you know, is Joe Biden actually going to stay as president all the way through until the inauguration next January, or would it be fairer on the American people for Kamala Harris to take that position now so the voters can see her in action?
Well, we're seeing her in action now, Nigel. First of all, I've had this date with you pending for a long time, and I'm so glad I was invited to be on with you. You're as charming as can be, and I'm happy to be with you. If I saw her, I'm going to be honest with you. I've known Joe Biden for 30 years. I've known Kamala Harris for just a few years. And I have to say, you know, we had lots of different feelings about her, very capable. She was the Attorney General in California. She was a great prosecutor, and I pity Trump because he's the felon and she's going to stick it to him. But the thing that's really amazing is yesterday she made a speech from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I'm a speech coach. I've trained people to make speeches, political, non-political candidates, people you would know, and I can't tell you who they were. And I was just amazed by her excitement, her ability to get to the topic and break it down. She knew who her audience was. She was connected. She was strong and powerful. And people complained about, well, she's too smiley. She was a powerhouse. And I have to tell you, I was wowed by her. And I think if you saw that, I think your mind would change. She's not anything but a powerhouse. And remember, she was a vice president. She had to fulfill the goals and the legislation of the president.
Well, yes.
But now she's on her own, and she is going to just be a killer.
Well, she was the vice president. You're quite right. And Joe Biden gave her specific responsibility for the border. Millions have come since the last election. And she wouldn't even visit the place. I mean, that doesn't suggest to me as strong a record as perhaps you're suggesting.
Well, you know, with all due respect, I think you may have been visiting Mr. Trump a bit too much because you've got his talking points about the border and others.
No, America's talking about it. It's not just Donald Trump.
She is not the border czar, as they like to call her. She was assigned to work on those issues and bring that legislation to Congress. And it was the rule from your friend and I've known for 60 years. I grew up a mile away from him in Jamaica, Queens, New York. And he said to his boys, who I call his acolytes or his disciples, don't give Joe Biden a break on this border issue. I want to win. And that's what they did in line. They drank the Kool-Aid, and it's not her fault. But she went down and she did visit some countries, and she put the best foot forward on that. And they'll continue. And we do have to get Congress to make sure that we have real strong border regulations. You've got your own issues, I know, and it's It's tough everywhere.
Well, yeah, we've got our own issues. You know, tens of thousands of people coming illegally, maybe 50,000 this year, something like that we know of. But in the case of America, we're talking about millions. So it is a very different quantum, isn't it?
Well, yes, but you know, we have a regulations and we have rules and we have to increase those and we have to get real strong legislation. But we need, as you said, we need to work together, and there's both sides of the aisle need to work together for the people who are the immigrants and for people who are being taken advantage of by those who come over. It's not an easy subject. And we have to really pull it together. Maybe she'll show that kind of compassion and she'll show that kind of strength, because she's going to be somebody to be reckoned with. And I tell you,
okay,
I was so impressed.
No, very interesting. And final thought: who's going to win on November the 5th?
Oh no, she'll win. The fact there's so much energy now, and you can see the polls, and the youth are behind her. Even Nikki Haley's voters are supporting her. She is showing real new, as JFK said, a torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century. Well, they're not born in this century, but this is who America is dying for. Joe Biden, well, I know, a wonderful man, an honorable man, but they want a new generation, and they've got it with her. And my God, imagine a woman president. You know, you had Lady Thatcher.
We've had three female prime ministers.
I know.
John Christopher Buer, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts on that. Well, very interesting, very, very bullish there about Kamala Harris. Interesting, back in 2016, I was the only political figure in the country saying I thought Trump was the right man. Suddenly we find all sorts of former prime ministers saying the same thing. What are your thoughts?
Trump is an extraordinary man because he's unusual for a politician in the sense he actually does what he says he's going to do. And that's what shocks, I think, the left a lot. They say they don't say what they're going to do. And then when they do something, it never works. He's unusual in that context. And I think I would be surprised if he loses against someone like Kamala Harris. I think Trump will win. It'll be close, but he'll win.
No, that's my view too. Stella, do you know much about Kamala Harris? Do any of us know much about her?
I know enough about Kamala Harris. I was an organizer on the first Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016, so I do have a fondness for Americans and American politics. Yeah. I find it quite sad when British politicians who previously would not have even, there would have been no suggestion of them even speaking to Donald Trump, let alone admiring him, are now pretending like they are his best friends. Not you, by the way, I'm talking about other people.
No, I've been very consistent.
You've been very consistent, exactly. Yeah. For others, I find that you are just trying to get some of his fame and popularity. They're just trying to, what's the phrase? Travel on his coattails?
Yes, yes.
That one? And I find it sad. Like, it's fine for you because you've always been his supporter, but for other people, I find it really pretentious.
Yes, well, Boris Johnson even turned up last week, despite some of the things he said about it.
He was speaking to an empty room.
Which pretty much sums up your point. Thank you. In a moment, an extraordinary comment by Alan Milburn saying that the long-term sick will have to be forced to go out and seek work. Goodness me, I think he might have read my manifesto from the last election. But we'll debate, is it actually feasible? And do we think the Labour government will do it?
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Gloomy skies overnight and into the start of Thursday for many of us. Outbreaks of rain, but it will turn brighter later on. Now, we started Wednesday with a ridge of high pressure. Didn't last long. Weather fronts are now moving in from the west and they are thickening up the cloud in many parts of the UK and bringing extensive low cloud to western parts and southern parts of the country with hill fog, coastal mist and areas of rain and drizzle. Nevertheless, with the largely cloudy skies overnight, it is going to remain mild in some places, rather muggy, 15 or 16 Celsius first thing. But if you're in the south and southwest, expect a gloomy start to Thursday. A lot of low cloud covering the hills, bringing some mist and fog to coastal parts as well, and some more persistent and heavier bursts of rain into South Cornwall and South Devon through the morning. Wales, cloudy and damp, the worst of the drizzle and low cloud over hills. Likewise for northwest England, But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, something a little brighter first thing, certainly for eastern Scotland. Some sunny spells coming through, largely dry here, showers pushing into western Scotland. And through the morning, we're going to see things cheer up across the northern two-thirds of the UK. The cloud will lift. There will be some cloud breaks, although there will still be some showers arriving across western Scotland, Northern Ireland into northern England. Mostly dry for Wales by the afternoon, as well as the Midlands, but for the south and southeast, outbreaks of rain, heavy at times, and as a result, significantly cooler compared with Wednesday. That rain's out of the way by Friday morning, and then for most, it's a much brighter start to the day. Sunny spells, but further showers are likely in places, especially, although not exclusively, across Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and Western England. Saturday, more widespread and heavier downpours for a time, interspersed by sunny spells, sunshine on Sunday.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Alan Milburn, the former Health Secretary, says the long-term sick must be required to look for jobs to deal with unsustainable welfare costs and to reduce the country's toxic reliance on immigration. And he makes the point that anybody in this election who'd been out and knocked on a few doors will have found that immigration has become a toxic issue. Hooray! Somebody in the Labour Party that actually wants to talk about this. It seems very few of their current MPs do. The question is, Stella, this is a difficult issue, isn't it? We know, and the pandemic, of course, made it much, much worse, that just with a Zoom consultation with a doctor, you could be put on long-term sickness. If it was for depression or any form of what could be described as a mental health problem, no requirement to even look for a job, extra money, and we're finishing up now with a burden that is intolerable. But is any government, and it'll be Liz Kendall, of course, who would be the minister in this case, is any government brave enough to actually tackle this?
It is quite hard to be on disability benefits for ill health or disability, but the reality is that we have 2.8 million people who are currently out of work because of ill health or disability. And the UK, as you said, the pandemic sure had an effect, but the UK is the only country in the G7 where our employment rates have not gone up to what they were before the pandemic. So what Liz Kendall says is we are going to aim for 80% employment rate. And the way that we are going to do this is by, rather than focusing on punishing people who are on benefits, we are going to focus on helping people to find work, sustainable work, good quality work that pays well. And that includes people who are on a long-term low-paid work, people who perhaps are in part-time work and who want to get education or training so that they can have an actual career. Because 1 in 8 young people are not in education, they're not in work, they're in no type of employment. So what are we going to do about this?
Now, I've heard what she said, I've heard what the government have said. Will they actually deliver on it?
Absolutely. I have been seeing Liz Kendall set out this narrative for a long time now. This is not new. So there will be a skills bill. Yeah. They will create this new body called Skills England. And what this body is going to do, it's going to match up the gaps that we have in our industry with the skills that we need in our current British workforce, so that we no longer rely on immigration.
The theory is great. I'd love to see it happen. One thing I'm very struck by, Richard Drax, I was out knocking on doors in the poorer parts of the constituency and meeting people who were saying, we want to work, but we can't. Because as soon as we work more than 16 hours a week, we lose. So people are this welfare system that the Liberal government originally and Labour after World War II brought in, that was designed to be a safety net, actually becomes a glass ceiling, doesn't it?
It does. The welfare system is not fit for purpose. It's unaffordable, quite apart from anything else. And it was designed to give people a set up, literally, and not for people to jump into it, which is what, sadly, many people do. The long-term sick, which is the issue I think you're talking about, that's quite complicated, and Stella and I were chatting before we came on your show, because there are probably some genuine cases, mental health cases, which may be, for example, impossible to get back to work. But I would like to sing the praises of the Weymouth Job Centre, which I visited before I lost my job.
Yeah.
They really are. They're not the old job centre.
Well, perhaps you're a client of theirs now.
Well, probably. I will be visiting very soon.
Sorry.
But there's no longer people smoking in a corner and the dingy and the glass in front and the sort of smell of cigarette smoke. This was bright and breezy, and everyone I spoke to said, Richard, our aim, someone comes in here, our aim is that we are going to get you into work. Not give you benefits. And the whole system now is structured to help all those...
So it felt very positive, then?
Very positive. And I was very, very impressed, and we need more of that.
I mean, what is extraordinary is the 2.8 million figure that we're talking about. It's 3.5 times higher than what it was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And yet 40 years ago, there were more people working manually in dangerous industries, mining, etc., having accidents. We've been dishing out these chits too easily, haven't we?
I'm afraid we have, and we're paying a hell of a price for it too.
We really are. Well, I hope this gets... I mean, as I say, I've listened to Liz Kendall, I've listened to Labour on all these things, and I just hope they will deliver on some of it. Now, debanking, the Farage moment. Last week, the Financial Conduct Authority put out a report, and I covered it. In fact, I had Liz Truss on the programme from America, where the FCA was saying that people in politics who are PEPs, politically exposed persons, they and their families need to be treated better by the banks. There are about 90,000 people in this country who are categorised as PEPs. I was debanked last year by NatWest Coutts, not because I was a politically exposed person, but because I didn't think that net zero was necessarily a very good policy, and I didn't quite fit with the bank's political views. But what has been happening to politicians and to relations of politicians over the last few years has been appalling. Folks, despite the FCA report, it's still happening. One of my children, and I won't say which one, all 4 are grown up, all 4 have got their own bank accounts and run their own lives. One of my 4 children was contacted last Friday by a bank called Wise and asked, "Are you the son of Nigel Farage?" The answer went back by email, yes. The next question was to say, you need to provide more evidence. Could we see your last 3 months' bank statements? To which the reply was, well, what's the point? You've got them. You are my bank. And within 2 hours, account closed. No questions, account closed. Gone, debanked, just because somebody is one of my children. I think the whole thing is an absolute disgrace. There we are. I did well. I didn't swear, but I'm pretty blooming angry about it. There were so many promises that came from the last government in response to this story, this massive story of my debanking last year. So many promises came from ministers. So many promises came from the Financial Conduct Authority. I'm going to be pushing Labour really hard on this. It's rough enough and tough enough these days to put your head over the parapet, to go into public life. If people think that their children or their parents or their relations are going to get punished because of what they do themselves on the political scene, you will put off good people going into politics. This needs to be sorted out. OK, in a moment, let's have a look. The royal family are making lots of money out of offshore wind farms, but they claim much of that money will go to good environmental causes. But do the royal family give us good value for money? It's a debate as old as the hills, but it's still worth having.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
You're making me think. You were here last week talking about The Merry Widow at Glyndebourne, which I went to see last night. And it was much the same thing. I mean, musically, it doesn't rate, to me, much higher than a musical. But the professionalism of the delivery, the joy of the cast, therefore the joy of the audience, the absolute charisma of Daniel Denise singing and dancing in the main role, absolutely superb. So just to recollect that.
Yeah, and
by the way, how long does Hello, Dolly?
That's on until September the 14th. And I would say there's been some bumpy, like My Fair Lady, sort of traditional musicals have sort of wobbled quite a bit recently, even The King and I a bit. This one nails everything. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I came out humming and beaming for the rest of the night. And the second one is The Baker's Wife, complete opposite. Small show at the Meunier Chocolate Factory. And again, we've got bootleg illegal footage of me, I think, just to give, because you need to see the setting of this place. It's completely incredible what they've done in a small space. Hopefully we've got a little bit of my illegal video again. It's set up like a 1930s Provence village square. You can see the cafe there at one end. At the other end is the bread shop, the bakery. The walls are all painted like brick. There's shutters everywhere, posters. People pop out of shutters that you don't even know how they are. We're sat either side. And it's a Stephen Schwartz musical. So he's the guy behind Wicked, Pippin, things like that. But it's still kind of joyous and fun until the marquis of the village, who has 3 nieces, comes along with his manservant who sweeps her away. And then for me, I didn't like how the story turns. I don't think it works anymore in a modern day.
The People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday, we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Royal family profits soar to £1.1 billion as cost of engagements over the last year increases by £300,000. So the royal family are costing all of us about £1.29 per person per year. That will go up a little bit next year. And the real reason is that the Crown Estate owns quite a lot of seabed around this country. And, of course, offshore wind farms are where they're making their profits and their money. Now, this debate is as old as the hills, but it keeps coming back. Do the royal family give us good value for money? Well, joining me is Norman Baker, former Liberal Democrat minister and author of What the Royal Family Don't Want You to Know, and Charlotte Griffiths, editor-at-large of The Mail on Sunday. Now, Norman, we love the royal family. They're enormously popular. The rest of the world are jealous, particularly Americans, jealous to the back teeth that we have this family.
It doesn't mean you give them a blank cheque. And if you look at the cost of the British royal family compared to the European royal families, any other European royal family, it's enormously more expensive. And actually, the figure you've quoted fails to take into account, for example, the tax exemptions, which they uniquely have, and other royal families don't. The fact is, let's give you a figure, 7.9 million was the cost of the civil list for the royal family in 2011. 7.9 million. We're now over 100 million a year. And that's a fantastic increase. And the reason is because George Osborne, when he was Chancellor, decided to change the arrangements under pressure from Charles to move the civil list out of the way and to replace it with access to the Crown Estate. The Crown Estate is not actually, despite what it says, something which the royal family has been able to tap into.
There was a controversy over this.
Since 1760, because in 1760 it was handed over to the public in return for the civil list. Now, technically it belongs to the king, but no one's exercised that. And what's happened in 2011, of course, is by linking the royal income to a property company which produces excess above inflation every year. That means the royal family's income has gone up substantially without wind farms.
But are you suggesting, Norman, are you suggesting that we have a bicycling monarchy?
Yes, I am.
You are. Right, so get rid of all the splendour.
Well, I don't get rid of all the splendour. Some of the splendour doesn't cost very much. But there's a huge number of properties you have. There are a huge number who will support you from the Duchy of Lancaster, Duchy of Cornwall. And if you look at the European monarchies, which is where they are in the 21st century, they are rather better than ours in terms of value for money.
Dull and boring and ghastly. Charlotte, he's a bit of a meanie, really, isn't he?
He's big and meanie. Have you ever heard of a European royal? Can you name them? I mean, we can't really. You know, Prince William, Prince Charles, they are the face of this country, and you know, Charles has foregone a £110 million windfall. You know, the cost of the sovereign grant's been frozen at 83 million for 3 years. William is busily rehoming the homeless all over the Duchy of Cornwall. He's built 24 houses for the homeless.
24 houses.
Well, and another 200 to come. And they do huge personal donations. They're working whilst two of them are working whilst they've got cancer. Princess Anne's been working through concussion. They work non-stop. Charles's number of engagements this year has only dropped by 100, and the man's got cancer, for crying out loud.
Well, this is not an argument about whether the royal family exists or not. This is an argument about value for money.
Well, I wonder, Norman, whether your book and your criticism, you're really a Republican, aren't you? You want to get rid of them, really.
I've said if you read my book, Nigel, I hope you read my book. It's
I'll be honest.
It's a very good read. I recommend it thoroughly.
Available
from all good bookshops and some bad ones as well. And that demonstrates very clearly that the issue about value for money is the central issue there in the book. And it doesn't actually say at the end, we need a republic. What it says is...
What would you like to see, a republic or not?
I don't mind a republic, but equally I don't mind a bicycling monarchy.
So I think we're really getting to
what I want is value for money for the taxpayer. And if you look at my record in Parliament, you'll find that I was the MP who, first of all, indicated the problems with MPs' expenses. I was the first one to do a freedom of information request. I do not like people taking money from the public purse when it's not necessary to do so, whether it's MPs, members of the House of Lords or the royal family.
But, you know, what does the royal family bring us? I mean, estimates vary. What does it bring us in terms of tourism?
Well, the most popular...
I mean, huge numbers of people every day in the holidays, walking past Buckingham Palace, coming to London.
They would walk past Buckingham Palace if the royal family were there or not.
Well, under your model, they'd be living in a 3-bed semi, wouldn't they?
No, they wouldn't, actually. But the most visited royal palace in Europe is the Palace of Versailles, and the French monarchy was abolished in 1848.
OK, so turn it into a museum.
I think Buckingham Palace... I don't know about Buckingham Palace, but they don't need all these properties you've got. On Buckingham Palace, £370 million of public money has been spent on that. The original estimate was less than 50 million. It's gone up to 370 million. And you know what? We've paid for all of that.
Peanuts compared to HS2, isn't it?
Well, we've paid for all of that, and Charles is keeping the income from the ticket sales.
One of the arguments that was often made, Charlotte, about the royal family is that it was far too big, there were too many people involved, too many people on the old civil list. But ironically, we're now in a situation, aren't we, where there aren't enough royals to perform duties.
No, exactly, because King Charles is incredibly aware of all of this, and so he's stripped back the monarchy to its very bare bones. And now, you know, he's facing criticism because it's too skeletal and there aren't enough royals on hand to do duties if anyone's ill. But he's completely aware of the fact that, you know, he's come under criticism and his mother had too many people on the balcony, and he's worked really hard to strip the monarchy right back to its bare bones.
But it can barely function now, surely. I mean, Harry's disappeared. Anne, as you say, had that fall, but she's well into her 70s and probably can't go on at the same pace that she has been for the last few years.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, and of course, the Prince and Princess of Wales. I know the Duke of Edinburgh has stepped up. But really, it's a very small royal family now.
It's a really small royal family. It is stripped to its bare bones. You're right. If somebody is ill, or indeed 3 people are ill, as has happened recently, and 1 has left altogether, they're in real trouble. But it's because they listen to people like Norman, and they can't, they really are. They've heard years and years of criticism, and they've stripped it right back. And actually, Buckingham Palace is on course to be under budget. I've never known a public building that's been on course.
Sorry, that's really not true. But the original estimate was less than £50 million, and it's now going to cost £370 million. If we come out at £368 million, that's not under budget. That's massively over where it was originally going to be. And it's not been true. It's been stripped back. OK, there are a few people on the balcony, and there aren't enough people at the moment to perform the functions always been
charities and all those things,
which have been traditionally performed. But what's not been stripped back is the income from the public purse, from the taxpayer. That's been increased massively.
Well, it's true. Their money is going up, and the Crown Estates have reaped a big bonus. King Charles has promised that quite a bit of that money will go to environmental causes, and I think we can believe him on that. But just giving it a sense of perspective, we as a country are 2.7 trillion in debt. This is really peanuts, isn't it?
It is in terms of the overall deficit, which Liz Truss and others generated for us in the last Parliament.
No, it's been going on for much longer than that.
but that doesn't make it right. People in top positions in society, whether it's the royal family or the politicians and the cabinet and everything else, set by example. They have to lead by example, and that's not leading by example.
Well, do you know what? I think in terms of public service, they've led by example for a very, very long time, Charlotte.
And they bring people a lot of joy. I think that's what you're not accounting for. There is.
We love the royal family.
OK, so they actually cost us 77 pence a year.
That's not true.
It's gone up
sorry,
slightly.
It's
gone up slightly to £1.29. It's not a big cost for what is essentially a wonderful luxury, a point of pride for the nation. It brings a lot of people joy. The amount of Buckingham Palace garden parties they throw for thousands of people, the amount of letters they write. These are letters that, your granny keeps on the mantelpiece for her whole life. Huge sources of pride to meet the King, to meet Catherine.
And I think the Queen, the late Queen, was probably the most respected human being in the world.
Totally, and a huge badge of honour for our country, the most famous woman in the world.
Yeah.
And people's whole lives were made by that brief moment they met the Queen. And I think that continues, and we can afford that little bit of luxury.
Come on, cheer up, Norman.
I'm very happy, thank you very much. I'm very happy. I'd be much happier if they got good value for money out of them, which we don't.
Fine. Well, look, it's a very good, healthy and spirited debate. I'm joined in the studio by Jacob Rees-Mogg. Now, Jacob, what on earth is going on with this reality TV show? Tell us all.
Oh, well, at least I'm not going into the jungle. I'm not following the footsteps. Well, I'm going to be doing something with Discovery Plus. They are following me around. They're here in the studio at the moment, and they're beginning to see what life with Jacob Rees-Mogg is like.
So they're going to be following you, but this is also inside the home as well, isn't it?
Yes, no, they've come to see us at home, and Mary, my daughter, is absolutely loving it. My grandmother, my father's mother, was an actress, and I think this is inherited by Mary, who's absolutely
How long
loving
are they going to follow you for?
I'm not entirely sure when they're going to end. It was because we were thinking there'd be an election in November, and that all came earlier, so I think they're trying to get it all done quite quickly.
And are you not worried about the downsides of this?
Well, there's always risk in anything, isn't there? I talked to you about going into the jungle.
Yes.
And I thought there were more downsides than upsides. You were right that it was very good for you, and I think hugely helpful in getting you to appeal to a new audience that hadn't seen you before. And I'm afraid in politics you have to put yourself out and about.
Yeah, well, you're certainly doing that. and the kids are all very excited about it.
Yeah, well, to differing degrees. I mean, some of them like it more than others.
Goodness gracious me. Now, Jacob, I was there at PMQs today, and it appears that Rishi Sunak agrees with absolutely everything Keir Starmer says. There's no opposition at all.
I'm afraid the problem is that the budget we had from Jeremy Hunt could have been given by Rachel Reeves, and the King's speech, mostly, could have been written by Rishi Sunak. And what worries me is that voters voted for change, and they're not getting it. And you see in America that whoever they vote for, the Democrats think they can run a puppet.
I know,
so you can have something that isn't mentally fit for... I mean, it is disgraceful how those elected have allowed themselves to get completely out of touch with the people who vote for them in this country, in the United States,
I'm afraid I agree. I mean,
Europe.
There's this sort of conspiracy theory of the uni-party. Well, I tell you what I've seen so far in this Parliament, that isn't too far away. In a moment, Jacob Rees-Mogg will be giving you the State of the Nation. First, though, let's get the all-important weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Gloomy skies overnight and into the start of Thursday for many of us. Outbreaks of rain, but it will turn brighter later on. Now, we started Wednesday with a ridge of high pressure. Didn't last long. Weather fronts are now moving in from the west and they are thickening up the cloud in many parts of the UK and bringing extensive low cloud to western parts and southern parts of the country with hill fog, coastal mist and areas of rain and drizzle. Nevertheless, with the largely cloudy skies overnight, it is going to remain mild in some places, rather muggy, 15 or 16 Celsius first thing. But if you're in the south and southwest, expect a gloomy start to Thursday. A lot of low cloud covering the hills, bringing some mist and fog to coastal parts as well, and some more persistent and heavier bursts of rain into South Cornwall and South Devon through the morning. Wales, cloudy and damp, the worst of the drizzle and low cloud over hills. Likewise for northwest England, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, something a little brighter first thing, certainly for eastern Scotland, some sunny spells coming through, largely dry here, showers pushing into western Scotland. And through the morning, we're going to see things cheer up across the northern two-thirds of the UK. The cloud will lift. There will be some cloud breaks, although there will still be some showers arriving across western Scotland, Northern Ireland into northern England. Mostly dry for Wales by the afternoon, as well as the Midlands, but for the south and southeast, outbreaks of rain, heavy at times, and as a result, significantly cooler compared with Wednesday. That rain's out of the way by Friday morning, and then for most, it's a much brighter start to the day. Sunny spells, but further showers are likely in places, especially, although not exclusively, across Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and western England. Saturday, more widespread and heavier downpours for a time, interspersed by sunny spells, sunshine on Sunday.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm. You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight. And Jem Chowdhury has been found guilty of directing the